construction and maintenance cost. And we've been looking over the years, and this is the first time I've seen it happen. So that's really thrilling. I think this one has already, uncertainty. That was already said before, namely that I think you should be doing a bit more about assessing the consequences for different assumptions or really different levels of cost for the ultimate conclusions that you draw there. So nothing more about that. And also, and I'm just putting on this because I think it's a good line of work that you're doing. Again, precisely the same staples, the same bars that I've been using before. The only distinction being that I've just assumed that bits and pieces of these staples are, in reality, still the blue parts is the road administration costs, but then you have user costs and third-party costs. Of course, there's no science in this relative size of these different colors. But the main point I just want to make, and I think you're doing it also, but it's not very clear in the text, namely that even if you add this dimension into the analysis, which is very important, of course, yes. It doesn't change the basic structure of the sort of analysis that you are doing.
I totally agree with you.
And that is important because that again means, and I've been hinting at that before, namely that you have a very generic sort of application of this technique here. Okay, so we said this already before. Now I'm just looking again at the same statement and the same answer for paper number 5. And now I again want to come back to this issue of normative content of the claim. I mean, what we've been doing now here, we've been adding the consequences not only for the road administration, but also for the users and for society at large. And you're saying that build this bridge rather than that one. Now, what's the logic of isn't that apples and pears, or how should we be thinking about this? What's the basic motive for saying that this bridge is better than that, based on this comparison?
Yes, in fact, no one will like to be delayed in a road for 1 hour or half hour. And if you looked really as a government, for the user cost, for example, when we build a bridge, we will disturb the traffic. So in this case, the user will not, or me and you and the others, will not reach their work at the time. So in this case, each of us will lose 50 minutes or 30 minutes from his time. And that means that he will not pay the tax for the government for this time. So it's a direct cost for me because I lost 1 or 30 minutes from my time. And also it's direct cost or indirect cost to the government because they lost this tax for this. And why not considering this important issue in the analysis? And of course, different proposals are associated with different user costs. So this is one important thing. And the other important thing is the aesthetical and cultural value. For example, many bridges I know in Sweden and in other countries, they were the most expensive. And they have been already built and chosen as the optimal design. Why? Because they are very beautiful. But there is no systematic way for considering this aesthetic and cultural value. So this is what is clarified. So instead of subjectively hindering the procurement of the most sustainable bridge, we can develop a method for robustly including that aspect in the analysis.
I think my way as an economist to take on this whole issue to say that at the end of the day we want to promote welfare for society at large.
Yes.
At large, and like we've been talking about before, welfare for society at large includes, of course, the costs for the road administration because road administration is spending tax money on this construction and on the maintenance.
Yes.
But it also, of course, is another consequence for society is that we might be disturbed as users or that we might benefit into the future about this new bridge or rehabilitated bridge and so forth. Yes. And like the aesthetics dimension that you've been mentioning here. So yes. I think there is a strong link, and what I want to say with this is also, again, the very close kinship between life cycle cost analysis and cost-benefit analysis, because these are basically just two sides of the same sheet of paper. They're very close to each other, in particular in this respect. It gets very clear in this respect, because in this respect you do something more than just looking at financial costs. You're also looking at social costs in a very wide perspective.
Yes.
So I think we should think in very much the same way on that one. When it comes to this paper, I have a problem with what you refer to added value analysis. And I have that problem because I don't understand. I understand your formula, so to say. I understand what you try to say there, but I don't understand what is the extra information that you gain compared to just comparing the total costs of 2 or 3 or 4 alternatives. What is the value added of added value analysis, if so say?
Yes, in fact, I can perform, for me, if I want to build a bridge, I can perform life cycle cost analysis, and then when I choose the optimal bridge design, and I can go to the shop or ask some of the companies and build the bridge, and that's it. But for me, as a public agency, the procurement must go through tendering process, and especially under design and build contract, the door will be open for contractors. So in this case, I must establish unified guidelines for the contractors to consider life cycle cost aspects. And the rule of added value is to interpret the results of that into real value or monetary values added. I mean, I can use the conventional tools for comparing, but the conventional current tools could not interpret those results in real procurement processes. And the added value, it's not only counting actually for the cost difference or the life cycle cost difference, it also counts for the lifespan difference. For example, when we compare a bridge, a steel culvert with 60 years with a conventional concrete bridge with 100 years, so there will be not only cost difference, there will be a service life difference. So the cost equivalent of those 40 years.
But that is dealt with the annuity factor, isn't it? The LCA.
Yes, it's fact. It's real that the annuity factor could differentiate and tell you what is the most cost efficient one. But that factor is not interpreting and getting a parameter, a cost, a monetary value for each of them for cost equivalent for those.
I think, or rather I understood during your presentation here a bit more of what you're trying to do with this piece than I understood when reading about it in the text, because I didn't find it very clear in the text. But I think we can get back to it within a minute, because my final comments are related to paper number 2 when it comes to tendering, and I think that there is something there that is really that the main focus on paper number 2 is on tendering, and now this concept that we were just talking about, namely added value analysis, basically understand it now that this is a tool that you're thinking about as a means for making it easier to do the tenders.
Yes.
I didn't see that link before, but I think I have the idea now. So this is my final set of comments, which are related to paper number 2, and I think this is very interesting. It's instrumental in important senses, and you mentioned them yourself. You have, or rather, Trafikverket is having a very strange, to my mind at least, a very strange strategy of tendering 50% of all the contracts using design build, and I think that is stupid, because you should, of course, all the time use the most efficient way of undertaking the tender. So 50% is, I don't understand why they are saying that, but that's a fact. And for that reason, it's very important to have some sort of tool to use in this specific context. And I think that this paper's, I found this paper most interesting actually, because it's a very valuable way of dealing with these things. What happens is, if you have a design build process, it is feasible to submit the bid not just for one specific construction, but actually for different construction types. And this may have consequences for construction costs for the expected lifetime of the asset that is to be built, and indeed for future maintenance cost and cost to society. So it's very important to have some sort of means for making the comparison between these different ways of doing it. And that is really the whole purpose, and we've been saying that already. I think, I don't know how much the rest of you understand about what you refer to as the standard way of doing the construction. I think it's easy to understand the significance of design build if you just briefly consider the typical way of doing this sort of tendering, implementing these type of tendering processes. I think some engineers at least refer to design build, and here we call it for utförande entreprenad, which is, I mean, we looked into data of the last 10 years, something like that. And during that period for road construction at large, they're using design build for over 90% of all contracts that we've been collecting. So it's really, and this is now changing, like you're saying, so it's all the more important to look at design build. But anyway, the standard way of doing this is that the tendering agency, Trafikverket in this particular case, or a consultant that is hired to do the work on behalf of the agency, which typically happens. It's still the agency that is responsible, which is the principle. Prepares drawings and details about the context, and in particular a bill of quantities, where basically all sort of activities which have to be undertaken are defined, and they are defined so much as also to include precisely in which quantities. And the bidding goes on by each bidder submitting a price for each of these quantities. And this is actually taken from an actual contract. So in this particular instance, it's just 3 activities, or 4 activities, 4 rows. The first row is saying there is a meter, 13 meter of something, and the bidder in this case submitted the bid 19,100 per meter, so the total cost is 250,000 almost. And second row, second activity is 20 units of something, and you see a unit price 1,200, total cost 24,000, and so on and so forth. So when I first bumped into one of these bills and quantities 5 years ago, I was just taken aghast by the detail. The detail in when you're asking a builder to do something. As an economist, I just, whatever, I mean, that is really contrary to market economy. Market economy is that everybody is maximizing something and doing it in the best possible way. And here all of a sudden we have really a centralized economy where you tell precisely someone what to do. And indeed, you don't get paid if you don't do these quantities. So there are very many strange incentives and so on. So, and we will not go into that here. But anyway, you allocate the contract in the standard type of way to the one that has submitted the lowest bid when you multiply P and Q and add everything up. And then you're actually paid according to what you've been doing. Yes. So this is really the centralized way of implementing something. I am the principal. I decide, undertake these 50 activities, don't care what happens. Then after you've done these 50 activities, whoops, that's a bridge, or that's a piece of road. You don't even need to say what the purpose is. In principle, in practice, that's not what happens. But if you really peel off all the details, that is the meaning of this whole process. And that is what they intend to change by implementing design build. Yes. Which is fine, and I really like that. And yes. But just give me your definition of design build then.
Yes, it's you can say it's in this type of contract. Trafikverket is not mentioning the bridge type or the bridge structure, the bridge layout. They are describing the function of the bridge in a functional terms, considering value engineering. And for example, we want to build a bridge from point A to point B, and this bridge must carry the load of this amount and must meet the design standards and these requirements, and that's all. And the contractors is supposed to propose the bridge procurer with designs that meet the functional requirements. And they are free to choose the construction material. But of course, for example, the bridge procurer can say that a height or a free height of 5 or 6 meters must be achieved, the number of supports can just in very simple way. And for me, really, I think and believe even that design and build contract together with the lowest life cycle cost bid is certainly can afford better opportunity for considering life cycle cost aspects than conventional contracts.
Well, I have a colleague, he's Finnish, but he lived in the United States for many years, and we're talking about public-private partnership and a range of different types of contract types. And he was making precisely the same statement.
Yes.
Before you ever could think about public-private partnership, you must understand the difference between the standard design bid build and DB, like we're talking about here. So it's definitely like you say. Yes. Or I just suggested a sort of definition here, and that is very much the same thing as you've been saying here. But, and that is really my but, I think that in the text you are, so to say, disqualifying what you're saying yourself. And indeed, I think Trafikverket might be doing the same thing, namely that even if this is the definition, what in principle should be a design-build contract, if you look into the bits and pieces, into the details, really the devil is out there. So you want to use LCC as a platform, and you in the text suggest 3 different approaches. And like you're saying in your presentation before here, this third bullet point here is really what you suggest.
Yes.
And I don't really understand the difference between the first one. The first one means that it's the bidder that tells you, as a principle, what the future cost will be. And we know that they might have incentives for skewing everything in different ways. So that's clear. But what's the difference between 2 and 3?
Yes. The first one, I should add actually that some of the contractors might underestimate these costs because, in fact, they are not obligated in the long run. And
they don't have commitment as we economists try to.
And the other thing, they will not, most of them will not be familiar with the actual cost because those costs are in fact incurred by bridge procurer, by Trafikverket. No one is paying for Trafikverket for maintaining the bridge.
But assume that we do this for several years, will they not learn that side? If they are, so to say, getting aware of that they will, that this will be important, will they not try to learn these things?
I hope so that they will learn, but I mean, I'm talking now for the current situation.
Okay.
Yes.
Fine. Yeah.
And the second way is requesting contract, is applying lives. I mean, without mentioning any guidelines or without mentioning any benchmarks in the tender documents. For me, as Trafikverket or as a bridge procurer, I could not select the most life cycle cost efficient proposal after performing a life cycle cost analysis process, because those contractors, they can go to the court and they can say that he did not count precisely, and in fact also different analysts can generate different results. But this is one important thing, and also I could not do it because one of them might go to the court and they can claim for this, and usually, certainly I will lose as a bridge procurer. And the third improper way, actually, is to remind me. It's the third improper way.
But I mean, the first one is that you don't have commitment on part of the bidder. The second one is that if you're not careful, you could have an appeal to court.
Yes.
If you're not careful from the start, precisely how you're going to do the evaluation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm still a bit curious about the second and the third suggestions here. I don't see the distinction between the second and the third. You have it here on page number something. I think I thought I had made a reference.
Yes, yes.
But anyway.
Yes, the third one is the principal makes the assessment after that bid have been submitted. Because, contractors, in this case, if I choose the most life cycle cost efficient one, and I did not mention that I will choose this, and did not put guidelines, and I considered the analysis generated by one of the contractors. Some other contractors can strongly question the analysis done by the other contractor.
I think I have a question precisely. That's on the next page, really, or the same page, is saying that this might raise impediments and allow bias during bid evaluation, and that is precisely what you're talking about now.
Yes.
So what you're saying is that the question that I had here for the third bullet, you're saying that the procurer should establish in beforehand precisely how the assessment is going to be made.
Yes, it must be stated clearly in a legally acceptable way even. Yes.
Yes. Do you see any problems with doing that?
In fact, I was thinking that it will be a problem, but after procuring the Carlos Nassr Bridge, I didn't see a problem. And also, after submitting my thesis, I looked into the procurement policy within Trafikverket, and I think I have here a slide, perhaps I can show it. And it's really wonderful. And
see if we can manage this very advanced sort of. Wow, I'm not a technician. I could still manage.
I have some extra slides actually, but this is one of the best things that I have found really. That here is the procurement process, and the procurement process according to the public procurement and the European derivatives, it must go through needs and the procurement production formulation. And in this phase, they can state that here description of what work is procured, what is required, and here as well as how the tenders will be evaluated. So according to the law, it's allowed for mentioning that the tenders will be evaluated according to this thing.
I agree with that. I have a problem with it also, but perhaps we take in between, we get back into that. Okay, so I get to that one.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. This is perhaps something slightly different, but I think it strongly relates to this. You're saying here on page 79 that something about that contractors should supplement their bids with more precise bill of quantities for their respective proposal. Why is that so?
Yes, in fact, the sub-added value technique or the bridge structural member level of added value, it counts how many. We say that we will enclose two levels of added value. The first level is proposal level. We will say the contract, the type of the bridge and its structural member, and only one number for each proposal. If the contractor proposed a typical proposal, he can add this added value. But this might neglect some proposals from consideration. So we will not mention the proposal type, but we will say that for each bridge structural member, add this value. And the contractors, they should submit their proposal with a more precise bill of quantities, and to be able to evaluate them correctly.
I think I'm getting to understand a bit more what you're referring to here, and I don't think it was that clear in the text. The concern that I'm having all the time in this is that, and I think it comes through at more places in this section also, namely that you're requiring the bidders to do so much things that in reality should not be necessary if it is a design bid contract. I mean, my suggestion is the following. you tell me if you want to, how much you want to have in remuneration for building a bridge between these two places. I don't care one bit how you do it. As long as a bridge stands there for 60 years or 100 years, and as long as the maintenance costs for the future are not too high. So that is the benchmark, so to say, as I see it. That is really the basic idea in the design bid process. And relative to that, what you're suggesting here and what we're seeing a lot about in the future, in real applications, is that so many more things are stated or requirements are made on them. And like you're saying, of course, the natural objection is that, of course, you could exaggerate the future, how long it will last. You can exaggerate future maintenance cost, or rather how much you will save on it, and so on and so forth. But could you think of any other way of handling this, other than, I mean, any other way than using, what was the word you LCC, the added value analysis? Yeah.
Yes, I think I do agree with you, really. Putting more regulation and more requirements in contractors, it might complicate the things. But at the same time, really, I think it's undoubtedly that different proposals are associated with different life cycle measures cost. At different repair cost, different bridge types need different actions during their life. And also under design and build contract, these life cycle measures costs are normally incurred by bridge procurer.
Yes.
So the contractors will not pay anything during the life. But I mean, so this is the fact. Different proposals having different life cycle costs. So from this point, I start thinking, why not transferring this cost difference from the beginning and procure the most life cycle cost efficient one?
I understand now better what your purpose is. It didn't come through to me very clearly in the text.
Yes.
But I don't know if anyone of you is more familiar than myself with this new Motala Bridge, which has just recently been opened. My understanding is that they have a contract, maintenance contract for, is it 20 years? Someone knows? So let's assume it's 20-year maintenance. So they build, it's NCC, I think it is, that built the bridge, and they have a contract now for handling the bridge during 20 years.
Yes.
So my preliminary proposal, I don't know if this is feasible, but my preliminary proposal would be, if you extend and also include a maintenance period, let them build the bridge in whichever way they want. They have to take care of the bridge during a certain period of time,
yes.
and they will perhaps have payment for the maintenance cost and so on and so forth. But constructing that in the right way will provide them with incentives, and then you don't need to care about all these things.
I totally agree with you, really, but I don't think this can solve the problem. Because, I mean, the contractor can go bankrupt after 2 or 3 years. So what will happen for traffic verket?
In other countries, they have these these bank guarantees. You can have a sort of backup bank guarantee.
Okay. This is one solution. And I can honestly tell you that the major actions performed on bridges are at least after 30 or 40 years.
I know, yeah. But someone, and this is in road construction at large, someone has been telling me that there is no way of building a road where you can actually, you have the idea that you have the maintenance for 20 years. And in year number 21, the road will fall apart. Some road engineer told me that is not feasible. You cannot build a road and be certain that it will last for the first 20 years, but then it will not last. So if it is working in a decent way during a period of time, then most probably it has been built in an okay way.
Yes. So it can be a solution.
I'm being deliberately provocative because I think very much of the discussion, what is happening now within road administration, in the transfer from design, bid, build to design, build, and possibly also design, build with maintenance contracts within it, is to provide a sort of understanding of precisely the sort of uncertainties that you're trying to address in your text here. The problem with very much of what you're suggesting here, technically, no problem. You're doing the right thing, so to say. But the problem is, of course, that all the time you have the principal, the public sector official, who interferes with the assessment of what an hopefully innovative entrepreneur has been suggesting. So there is a very deep inherent trade-off, conflict between these dimensions here.
Yes.
You've suggested one way of doing this, fine. Technically, I just have marginal comments to it, but as a matter of principle, it has some drawbacks.
Yes.
And I think we seem to be agreeing about that also. Yes, and we've also been talking about LCC sub-added values. Everything is related to your attempts to handle the fact that you will add features to this new road, which you have to deal in one way or another under the current implementation of design-build contracts. And compared to what I've seen of actual tenders, actual evaluations where you don't have any LCC analysis, I think this is a huge step forward. And I think there's more to be done, but I think this is still very good. So that really concludes my review of the text. And my way of reading this text is very much establishes the building blocks for doing all this line of work that we've been talking about now for an hour and a half or something. And getting much better understanding about whether or not we should or should not build a bridge, or if we should build this or that bridge, and whatever. And also for choosing the right sort of construction when it comes to design builds. And I think I think that's what I've been saying here for a while. That I made several comments relating to changes which it means that much more could be done, but it is still within the framework of the building blocks that, Mohammed, what you have presented in your thesis here. And indeed, I think, well, in some instances there might be consequences also for the answer to your questions, but very much it's a matter of fine-tuning and perhaps not doing it this way, but rather in that way, and so on and so forth. So I think that is extremely valuable. And in particular, and I've been hinting at this a couple of times, I think you neglected the very close relationship between cost-benefit analysis methods as such and life cycle cost analysis, because there is so much more to be learned that you've been using in this text here, which really could further improve the tools that you have here. And I see, I'm just happy as an economist, and that is really my last slide. To read a dissertation where we really make use of these sorts of tools, which are extremely basic in order to take decisions about using lots and lots of money in a clever way to the welfare of society at large. So congratulations to good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Jan-Erik Nilsson. Now I will give the word to the evaluation committee, and I will also leave the microphone, and perhaps you can pass it from one to the other. I will start with Professor Elfgren.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, to be able to take part in this presentation and discussion, and to read this publication. I've been involved in a European project called Mainline, where we are trying to get the whole life assessment tool for railway infrastructure. And I think you have contributed most importantly to do this. And what I like very much is that it is so concrete. There are examples, there are Swedish crowns on everything here, so you can compare it. I mean, in many of these papers, there are just general formulas. And I think it's when you come down to the details that you really see what it is and how it works. So I think that's very nice, and I'm impressed by it. And well, I have some small issues regarding details in the thesis, because the devil is in the details. And on page 8, for example, there's one little thing.
Can I see this?
You had it on a figure in your presentation too. And it's this, that what, it's just a small thing, but you there have something that you call whole life costing and LCCA, and then you have another area that is life cycle costing LCCA. And I think the line with the whole life costing LCCA should be go all over the, well, maybe you can find it.
You mean this one?
Okay. So clever. Yes.
Yes.
In the top of this figure, there is this one, yes, whole life costing LCCA, and that's just for the first part of it, and then the other one is life cycle. I think, shouldn't it be that the whole life costing LCCA should be covering all the process?
Yes, in fact, as I discussed, whole life cycle, I mean, in the feasibility study and area planning, we are